But then when I was 30, I had my daughter, son, and I had postpartum depression, really profound postpartum depression, which a lot of people don't talk about. And I couldn't write. I couldn't write for probably about 2 or 3 years. And it was clinical. I had to take meds. It was a whole thing. And so trying to climb back on the horse after that, after falling off sort of so precipitously, was a struggle. Right? Because now you got this kid, you're working. I was single at the time. I wasn't married to their father. And so I had to sort of like recommit in a serious way. So like you said, making that time and really taking yourself seriously. At the time, I didn't have a book published. I had only had maybe a couple poems in a couple journals. So I didn't even know to call myself a professional writer or think of myself as one. I was still very much thinking of myself as this is a hobby. This isn't what I do.
Who's ready for some Girl Talk?
Welcome to Girl Talk. I'm Nicole D. Miller, author, blogger, speaker, hybrid book publisher, and your host. At Girl Talk, we are a safe space for female leaders to engage in healing and edifying conversation. This is your Me Too empathetic corner, where we have authentic and transformative dialogue designed to uplift and connect high-achieving women like you. Are you looking for a safe space to cultivate sisterhood with other like-minded female bosses? Leave your cape at the door and join the conversation. Hi guys, and welcome to Girl Talk celebrating Toni Morrison. I'm your host, Nicole D. Miller. I cannot wait for you all to dive into this very special discussion that's honoring a legend, not just in Black literature, but in American literature. Joining me in this powerful dialogue are heavy-hitting female leaders Rhonda Crowder, Michelle R. Smith, and Kim Martin Sadler. All of these women are powerhouses who have excelled in community activism and in various aspects of literature, from journalism to poetry to editing to fiction writing and more. As you'll learn while listening, this conversation is being held in collaboration with the year-long statewide celebration of Toni Morrison. The celebration was initiated by Literary Cleveland and Ohio Humanities. I had the honor of partnering with our beloved bookstore, Hexagon Books in Cleveland Heights, for this event. If you're in the area, make sure to stop by and tell the owner, Manuel, I said hi. All of the panelists' contact information, as well as my partners, are in the show notes. Feel free to reach out to them directly. Now, without further ado, sit back, relax, grab your favorite beverage, and join the conversation. Hi guys! Thank you so much for coming out here to join this conversation. As you guys know, my name is Nicole D. Miller. I'm an author, hybrid book publisher, freelance journalist, and host of the Girl Talk podcast. Thank you! And I'm excited about this particular conversation as we are celebrating Toni Morrison in partnership with Literary Cleveland, Ohio Humanities, and Hexagon Books. This particular event is a part of a year-long statewide celebration of Toni Morrison, who is a legend. Yes. And I have some amazing women sitting here beside me who are going to share how she has impacted their lives and their experiences being literary creatives. If you're not familiar with the podcast, I just want you to know this is a safe space for female leaders for us to share, bond, connect. We do leave our capes at the door, so it's not about being strong. We are transforming the narrative of female leadership, which includes vulnerability and healing through dialogue. We will have Q&A after this panel discussion, so get your questions ready. And just to reiterate, we are here celebrating Toni Morrison as a part of this statewide celebration. You can learn more at ohiocelebratestonimorrison.org. First and foremost, I want to introduce our panelists really quick. We have Rhonda Crowder, Kim Martin Sadler, Michelle R. Smith. And to give you guys a little bit more information, Toni Morrison is a Nobel Prize winner, Pulitzer Prize recipient. She's a scholar. She's an editor, bestseller. The list goes on and on to describe Miss Morrison's accolades and accomplishments. But here at Girl Talk, as I mentioned, we dive into the intimate lives of female leaders. Who was Morrison as a mother, a friend, a Black woman in a male-dominant industry? And how did she transcend her time so that we here are honoring her today? I have an amazing panel of Black female leaders, as I just mentioned, and they're going to kick off this conversation. But first, we need to do our call and response. So here at Girl Talk, I typically start off with, who's ready for some? And you guys say, Girl Talk. Okay, come on, y'all. Come on. I know you've seen me do this before. You are not new to this, okay? So, be alive. Wake up.
All right.
Ready? Y'all ready? Who's ready for some
Girl Talk?
That's what I'm talking about. First and foremost, we have Rhonda Crowder joining the table. Rhonda is the CEO of Rhonda Crowder and Associates, a 15-year-old Cleveland-based creative services agency that specializes in marketing communication strategies for brand development, public awareness, and fundraising campaigns. RCA earned a Public Relations Society of America Cleveland Chapter Cleveland Rocks Award in 2020 for a Community Relations of Cause campaign. Rhonda is also a freelance journalist with local and national bylines and associate publisher of Who's Who in Black Cleveland, as well as a literacy advocate. She currently serves as the president of Greater Cleveland Association of Black Journalists and vice president of Friendly Inn Settlements Board of Directors. Rhonda coordinates literacy-based initiatives across Cleveland, including Huff Reads and Dickens Reads, while Rhonda Crowder and Associates played a major role in the success of the citywide Cleveland Reads campaign. Her career started at the historic Call & Post newspaper, where she worked as a general assignment reporter for over a decade. She holds a Bachelor of Arts in English with a concentration in creative writing, editing, and publishing from Cleveland State University and an Associates of Arts from Cuyahoga Community College. Rhonda has been awarded a Rotary Group Study Exchange Fellowship and recognized by ICANN Schools, El Hasa Court No. 47 Women of the Year, Cleveland Chapter of National Action Network, and the Phenomenal Foundation. She was named a 2019 Cleveland Champion by The Plain Dealer, Guardian, and IdeaStream, and received the 2020 Humanitarian of the Year Award from the Cleveland chapter of Southern Christian Leadership Conference. Rhonda published her debut novel, Riddles, in 2016 and has 6 additional manuscripts in the works. Please give a round of applause for Rhonda Crowder. Next, we have Michelle R. Smith. Michelle is a writer, poet, educator, cultural facilitator, and native Clevelander. She is the programming director for Literary Cleveland, 2025-2026 Poet Laureate for Cleveland Heights and University Heights, and author of the poetry collections Ariel in Black and the Vagina Analogs. Her poetry, microzine Black Lives Matters, a collection of cantata for an activist husband, was nominated for a Pushcart Prize in 2024. She has been published in The Normal School, The Gasconade Review, New Note Poetry, Merge Magazine, IO Literary Magazine, and other places. She has been a featured reader, instructor, performer, and panelist at the Lakewood Public Library, the East Cleveland Public Library, the Cuyahoga County Public Library, South Euclid, Lyndhurst Branch, the Cleveland Museum of Arts, Case Western Reserve University's Writers House, Imposters Theater, Borderlight Theater Festival, and Maelstrom Collaborative Arts. She is also the creator, co-producer, director, and host of Black's Museum, an annual performance showcase for Northeast Ohio artists, open to all forms and dedicated to honoring notable Black figures in American history and culture. Please give a round of applause for Michelle R. Smith. And we have our special guest, Miss Kim Martin Sadler. Kim has devoted her career to amplifying voices and shaping books that matter. As the founder and CEO of Sadler Communications and Consulting Group, LLC, she leads a boutique firm that provides customized publishing guidance to both first-time and established writers. With SCCG, Kim offers more than services. She offers partnership, vision, and a deep understanding of the publishing landscape. Her path to entrepreneurship began after a distinguished tenure as editorial director of the Pilgrim Press, the historic publishing imprint of the United Church of Christ and the nation's oldest religious publishing house. There, she helped launch the careers of prominent religious leaders such as Reverend Dr. Otis Moss III and Bishop Vashti Murphy McKenzie, while also editing the works of Cleveland's own Reverend Dr. Marvin McMickle. An author and playwright, Kim brings more than 25 years of publishing experience to her work. She blends editorial excellence with creative empathy, guiding writers through the complex, exhilarating process of transforming ideas into books that inspire, inform, and endure. Kim earned her BA in print journalism from Howard University's School of Communications and her Master of Arts in Psychology with a specialization in diversity management from Cleveland State University. This rare combination of disciplines grounds her publishing expertise in both clear communication and a deep commitment to equity and inclusion. At her core, Kim believes in the power of books that can change lives, and through SCCG, she has made it her mission to help writers everywhere share their voices to diverse audiences. Please give a round of applause for Kim Martin Sadler. So now you guys know why they're here. So I'm going to throw out the first question. When did you first fall in love with Toni Morrison?
So I was a student at Cuyahoga Community College, and I was taking an African American history class. And my teacher, shout out to Dr. Carolyn Gordon, because she is absolutely amazing. And she provided us with a list of 100 books that every African American should read. And Song of Solomon was on that list. And I had started hearing buzz about Song of Solomon, just so happened to be at the bookstore in Euclid Square Mall. So that's how long ago this was. And I saw Song of Solomon on the shelf. So I said, okay, I have to buy this. And I tried to read Song of Solomon, and I could not get off of Not Dr. Street. And I probably tried to read it like at least 3 times and just could not get past the first 5 pages. And I said, okay, I just put it away. And then when I got to Cleveland State as an English major, there was a course in Toni Morrison. And I signed up to take that course. And so you have to read all of her books when you taking a Toni Morrison course. And Song of Solomon turned out to be one of my favorites. So that was how I met and fell in love with Toni Morrison.
So my story is going to sound really similar. I picked up, well, my mother's an English professor, so books everywhere, and she had Beloved, but I think it came out in 1988, so I was 12. But I was a reader, so I picked it up, and it was the same thing. It said 124 was spiteful, and I said, wait, hold up, where are we? What is 124? What's going on? And I just couldn't, I was super young too, super ambitious, very, very arrogant. I was smart, so, but I couldn't do it. And so I put it down, but then I got to Case, same thing, got to school. And the first year that I was in Case in 1994, the poet and writer Claudia Rankin was there still. She left the next year. So she taught a Toni Morrison course, and I took that course. And so it was a really amazing experience to be in a class with Claudia Rankin teaching Toni Morrison. All the black kids, because it wasn't but a handful of us, on the campus in case we're in class. And so we all learned it together. And that's what, like you said, I found my way in, because they're not the simplest or most apparent books, but when you do it in a group, I think is like the way to do it. And so that's how, and then I ended up writing my undergraduate thesis about The Bluest Eye and Beloved and Paradise and what's the other one? Sula. Yep. So, yep.
Well, I first was introduced to Toni when I stepped on the hallowed grounds of Howard University. It is anybody who ever goes to Howard, if you step on those grounds, they're going to let you know who was who and who came before you and all the wonderful and great people who were just there at Howard. And so, you're in awe and you're like, I'm stepping on these hallowed grounds. And it's so interesting that you all mentioned Toni Morrison. When I was looking for my books, of all my Toni books, I found... Shut up. I'm going to tell her mama who I know. Brenda, I'm going to tell her. Right. But in 1977, I purchased this book, and you can see how old it is. And on the inside, I have Kim L. Martin. I wasn't even married. I was at Howard then. So that shows you how long. And it is so funny. I couldn't believe I still had it. But my mother always said, do not throw away a book. So I have had this book all these years. I have all of her books. But when I found this one, I said, I am bringing this book with me because nobody's going to believe. Oh, Lord, look, it's falling apart. And it was $2.50.
Oh, my God.
This book. In 1977. This is the price of this book. And so that's how I got introduced to Toni. I didn't start with the first book. I started with Song of Solomon. And I have never, ever thrown this book away. And when I saw these old pages, I was like, oh, my gosh. This has been around a long time. But when I saw the price, I was like, $2.50. Are you kidding me? But I will cherish this book always. And yes, it is one of the old, I'm picturing it now. But it is old. It is old.
1976.
Well, that shows you I was on Howard's campus in 1977, and this is the book that I bought. And I've always loved Toni, and I have all of her books. I started looking all over for her works, and in preparation for this, I started just really trying to digest a lot more of Toni because she was so phenomenal and just absolutely brilliant. Mm-hmm. So that's how I was introduced.
Well, I feel like I was a late bloomer because it wasn't until I was working on my first novel. And around that time, her documentary came out. I don't know if you guys saw the documentary. And I was up at like 2 a.m. because I was like eating words and eating writing and fiction. And I was falling in love with the world. And I was up at 2 a.m. learning this woman's story and getting to see her live was just amazing. And then, Michelle, you were doing a book discussion. Yes. And I tapped into that. And that's when I read The Bluest Eye. And I'm like, who writes like this? Like, I've been a reader all my life like you guys, but have never come across someone, and I know it's because she's a poet, but like, we're going to get into all that, which I know, Michelle, that's your jam, so. All right, here's the first little heavier question. So we know that Toni was a single mom, and she like fought to write, like getting up at 4 a.m., leaving the door open, because she wanted that time with her kids. Can you guys relate to that journey of writing while you have these other obligations or children or other challenges that you're facing? And how did you relate to her in that experience?
Well, I started writing when I was a kid. And so it was a thing of like, I always had time to write. I was really young. My mom bought me a typewriter when I was 14. And she said in the middle of the night, she would hear me in there like, and so it was just a part of everything that I did. But then when I was 30, I had my son, and I had postpartum depression, really profound postpartum depression, which a lot of people don't talk about. And I couldn't write. I couldn't write for probably about 2 or 3 years. And it was clinical. I had to take meds. It was a whole thing. And so trying to climb back on the horse after that, after falling off sort of so precipitously, was a struggle, right? Because now you got this kid, you're working. I was single at the time. I wasn't married to their father. And so I had to sort of like recommit in a serious way. So like you said, making that time and really taking yourself seriously. At the time, I didn't have a book published. I had only had maybe a couple poems in a couple journals. So I didn't even know to call myself a professional writer or think of myself as one. I was still very much like, thinking of myself as like, this is a hobby. This isn't what I do. But I had to really just sort of dig in. And one of the things that, kept me writing was remembering that Toni Morrison didn't publish her first novel until she was about 41. Because I was 30, and, the whole like internet fame and that culture, everybody is so young and they are so successful and they make a ton of money. They'll be like 18, 19, 20, 25. So at 30, I thought I'm already too old. I've already messed up. I've already, I should have done this already. But remembering that and then having as much respect as I do for her, I was like, oh, it's not too late. And so she was a tremendous role model for me. And also my mom, who didn't go to get her PhD until she was 41. So together, both of them writers, women, scholars, Black. My mother had been a single mother when she was raising me. So that played her biography played a huge part in inspiring me as a creative, not just sort of the work, although the work also, right? Because it's a high bar and you want to write that well. Nobody does, but you try. So she definitely was an inspiration for me as far as the mother writing. Yes.
Go ahead.
So, okay. So like Michelle, I was comforted by knowing that Toni Morrison didn't publish until, what was it, 41, something like that. But I was introduced to all of these absolutely amazing writers, Toni Morrison, Maya Angelou, Richard Wright, very young, very early in my writing career. So I was intimidated. I was very intimidated. Like, okay, I want to be a writer, but I don't know if I could write that well. And when I did the thing that helped me become a better writer is being a journalist. And I had my first experience with journalism on the campus of Cleveland State, went to the Call and Post. And I never wanted to be a journalist, by the way. I tell people that all the time. I wanted to write books, plays, and movies. I was very tunnel vision about that until I needed a job. So that's how I entered into journalism. But when I wrote my first book, which I was in my 30s, and still keeping in mind that Toni Morrison didn't publish until she was, I was working as a journalist. So I'm writing all day. So I get to work about 9 o'clock. I get off around 5 if I don't have a late assignment. And I would come home, and I had to learn how to re-engineer my days. So I would come home from work at 5 o'clock, eat, go to sleep. And then I would wake back up at 11, midnight, write all night till like 5 o'clock in the morning. Then I will take a shower, maybe, catch a few Z's, get back up and go to work. And I did that for about a year to get my first novel published. Nowadays, I'm an early riser. I wake up at 4 to start writing at 5. And so I've written at probably every hour of the day. And I found that early morning, I tell people all the time, I think you have to find the time that works best for you. But I have found that early morning works best for me.
Well, I have a strange, trajectory, because my writing came probably more so after I started editing and acquiring manuscripts for others. And I did more of the acquisitions, searching for good manuscripts and good writers. And in between that, reading and constantly editing, that's when I was like, I need to do a little more writing. But because I did so much editing and searching for good writers and good manuscripts, I did a lot of that. And at the time when I took my position, when I literally moved here from New Orleans to work for the United Church of Christ, the Pilgrim Press, and also the United Church Press. My children were 5 and 6, and I am a workaholic. And as my husband would tell you, I would literally work around the clock. I would bring work home, and I know, he would say, you need to stop bringing work home, but I just literally, because in the publishing industry, you're working on deadlines. Everything is a deadline. And we would acquire about 52 manuscripts a year, and that's a lot. And we had to work. So I was constantly editing, constantly working on stuff, bringing stuff home. And I worked around it, picking up my kids from school. Well, no, my husband picked up the kids. I would go home and meet the bus, and then just edit and just work, then looking for another manuscript. And I also had to travel to different meetings and I have some colleagues here who I used to work with. I had to travel places to look for manuscripts, to colleges, to conferences, and so it was pretty busy. But fortunately, my husband and I, we figured it out. We had some wonderful babysitters who we had met, because we moved to Cleveland not knowing anyone. And so it was an opportunity to meet people and to just have the ability to work in a community, because people had to help us with the kids and everything. But it was really hard. It's a lot of work. I mean, writing is a hard job, and it was difficult. I remember taking manuscripts with me on vacation, just working nonstop, because I couldn't take a vacation. You're the editorial director. You've got deadlines. The spring list ended, the fall list starts. The spring list, so it's just constant. And it was a lot, but I got it done, and I loved it. I just loved it, but I was a workaholic. So, but it's not good to work all the time. And now I realize that, but I just enjoyed it because I love words. And so.
Thank you guys for sharing, and I love how vast our experiences are, yet we still have a commonality of being hardworking Black women in the literary sector. I'll say for me, I've had the luxury of being able to do this full time, so I didn't have children, I didn't have a 9-to-5, but kind of similar to what you were saying, Michelle, I wrote out of a state of grief, of dealing with trauma from my mother's passing. So I literally could not write for 3 years because of the trauma. And once that 3-year period ended, it was like the floodgates opened and this creative space opened up to me. Initially, I was a nonfiction writer. I did not see myself as a writer. My background is in business. I have an MBA in accounting. So making that switch was such a huge leap to be like, who makes money writing? That was my thought. I'm like, how am I going to be out here, But clearly, people figure it out. And so for me, I was inspired that she was later in her years of publishing. I was 39 when I published my first novel, so that was inspiring as well. But I definitely appreciate how all of us have these different avenues, but we still have to work for it, because you're not getting paid while you're writing. You're really doing it because you love it.
Right.
It's a passion.
You don't get paid even when you do. You don't get paid.
Facts. So another, vulnerable thing that Toni Morrison shared in some of her interviews, she opened up about writing out of loneliness after her divorce and raising her children, which she, resonated with you when you said it's hard. You need a village. And she said even with her village, it was hard, right? And so she talks about even with having an unhappy childhood, sometimes you turn to reading. That makes you a good writer. That was my story. I didn't even know. But that's where her writing came out of. Can you guys relate? Did your writing come out of some difficult times in your journey or lonely times?
I think as an adult, yes. When I started, it was just, it was school. I went to Warrensville, and a lot of my teachers were Black. And, Renee! Hey, girl! I thought that was you. Cleveland is, I'm sorry. No, but I had I was born in 76, and so all of us in the 80s, we had these Black teachers who, they were like civil rights babies, and they had graduated and got their degrees. And so all these Black professionals around you, I had a bunch of principals and teachers who were Black. So Miss Baker, my 4th grade teacher, was like, we're going to write poems. And my mom was an English professor. I was a reader. And so I knew a very like limited knowledge, right? That poems rhyme and that they have the same number of syllables, beats on a line. So very rudimentary. So I did that. And I think I probably wrote about the tree outside the window. And the teacher said, "Oh my God, this has perfect meter and perfect rhyme. Who taught you how to do that?" And I said, "Nobody." And she said, "Oh, well, you just must be a natural poet." So, you're 9 and you go, okay. Somebody tells you that you can do it and you go. And so I went home and I told my mom I'm a poet, and my mother does not like poetry. She's an English professor, but poetry is her least favorite genre.
But she can edit it because we talk.
She can edit like no other. But she's a great editor because she does not like it. So she'd be like, "Girl, that's trash. I don't." No. But I went home and I told her I was a poet, and she was not amused. But she was also just like, okay. And so then, she, like I said, I had books, and she put me in contests, and she brought me a typewriter, and she would listen to me read these awful poems that I wrote. And so I think it came out of, permission. And I think one of the things that I think is important is that when we see young people who are creative, or we give them permission. And I think like Toni Morrison is in celebrating, Toni Morrison is one of those things that gives people permission. Like if you're thinking that you have a voice or you're thinking that you have a story, she even says, if there's a story that you want to read, write it yourself. So I was given permission. And then when I got older, and it was a little bit more complicated because, like, I had a job. I always had a job. I always had 2 or 3 jobs. And I was like you, nobody makes money writing. And especially not, like I said, especially not poetry. So I would write, but I worked. And I never thought I would be published. And I never, And so, I wrote more for me. And so then, yes, I would write about the things that were happening, the loss of family members, relationships, friends. And one of the things that I'm really good for is current events. So like the things that are happening in the world now, I write poems about, people getting killed by ICE. I write poems about children being bombed in Palestine. I write poems about Black people getting beat by the police. It's such a heaviness and such a hurt that I carry about sort of the state of the world and what happens in the Black community, and especially what happens to Black women and Black girls. So a lot of my poetry comes from that, trying to metabolize that. I think let people know that these people that they victimize, that they hurt, that they discount, that they, disregard are humans. So I'm very much about like just writing from my perspective as a Black woman and just asserting again and again and again how worthy we are, how deserving we are, how beautiful we are. That's like my big thing. So I guess, I don't know, loneliness, but certainly out of a certain existential kind of like feeling of sometimes despair, sometimes angst. Also, though, out of anger and this sort of just like insistence on us. So, yeah.
Amen. Amen.
Okay, so that was part 1 of celebrating Toni Morrison. Now, can I be frank with you guys? I was in awe to be sharing this space with these ladies who have broken glass ceilings and kicked down historical doors for Black women writers and our community. Even still, I believed it was a divine opportunity, and I was right. The ladies brought so much to the table by sharing their individual, unique experiences of becoming writers and then meeting Miss Morrison's work. I love that the panelists were intergenerational because it shows how Morrison's work transcends age. Even in the audience, we had a mix of race, gender, class, as well as age. In this conversation, what I appreciated was that even though everyone had a different avenue to writing, their natural gift made room for them. Many of us got a late start in writing, and Miss Morrison's testimony about publishing later in life was inspiring. Her story showed it's never too late to pursue your dream. Maybe writing isn't your thing, but is there something burning in your heart that you feel is too late to pursue? Hopefully this conversation motivates you to take the step needed to see what's on the other side of that burning sensation. As you can see, there is no wrong way to walk in purpose. One thing that we learned was how much work is required to be a creative writer. Some of us had 9-to-5s, some of us had children and family obligations, some of us had to overcome emotional hurdles such as grief, but we all had to have a made-up mind to grind. So even when in purpose, you must apply work to your faith. I appreciated Kim sharing about her supportive community, which Toni Morrison spoke about in one of her interviews. I can relate to the testimony of having a community. But even as Miss Morrison stated, even with the village, it's still hard. I can say that even with my community, the journey of purpose has still been hard. But what I think we can see from Miss Morrison's story is that harder paths reap the greatest rewards. We're celebrating her years after her earthly life ended and continue growing in wisdom through her art. Now, as you ponder the conversation and breathlessly await part 2, I leave you with this. In the words of Michelle, how are we giving young people permission? How are we giving ourselves permission? That's all for now. And remember, I attract amazing women doing amazing things. So guess what, sis? That means you're amazing. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. To continue the conversation, join our Girl Talk community by following @GirlTalkCLE on Instagram and Facebook.com/HTOHB, where you can join the Girl Talk Facebook group. You can follow me personally on Instagram @HTOHB, on Facebook.com/HTOHB, and at YouTube.com/@HTOHB. Feel free to reach out via email info@indiemillerpublishing.com. If you're a writer who wants to take the next steps into becoming a published author, you can book a one-on-one consultation at indiemiller.pub. Just let me know you heard about my publishing house through Girl Talk, and I'll give you a 50% discount on our one-on-one. If you'd like weekly inspirational nuggets, you can subscribe to my blog and monthly newsletter at NicoleDMiller.com, where you can learn more about me and my writings. Till next time.